Shraddha to Nishtha. And as sadhakas, most of us are kind of caught up in this anartha-nivritti stage. Anartha-nivritti is actually an extension of the word, or it's extended from the word artha. Artha means, like we hear that the four Purusarthas, means dharma, artha, karma, moksha. So artha means those things that are wanted. So anartha means those things that are not wanted in our life. You know, anarthas are like ghosts, you know, that haunt us, that come in our lives when we don't want them. They're the things that, as I mentioned earlier, that stand between us and Krishna. So we should understand what they are, because pretty much, if we overcome anartha-nivritti, success in spiritual life is more than likely guaranteed. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he describes that there are certain behavioral symptoms of one who is who's going through this stage and who has many anarthas. The first, he says, is anyone know the Sanskrit? That's the third one. There are certain behavioral symptoms, there are certain characteristics of someone that's undergoing anartha. The first one is utsaha mayi. So utsaha, I'm sure everyone's familiar with it, means one is very enthusiastic. But utsahi mayi means one that is someone who is falsely enthusiastic or falsely confident. And I'm sure everyone, to some degree, has been through this, and especially if you observe new devotees, they come in and they're very enthusiastic about spiritual life. And there's nothing wrong with it. But what happens is sometimes one becomes very enthusiastic, so much so that they become very proud. Right? They come in, they're chanting, and they see other devotees that have been around for years, and they think, come on man, why aren't you dancing? Why aren't you chanting enthusiastically? But because this enthusiasm is not based on a proper foundation, this enthusiasm is short-lived. Like in one place, Satyananda Maharaj, he talks about the curve of enthusiasm. It's actually a phenomenon that occurs in many religious movements, that people come in, very, very enthusiastic, gung-ho, but then they kind of dwindle out. You know, we get our challenges, and, you know, nothing's new anymore, and, you know, the devotees, when they first used to come, they used to give me Mahaprasad, and now, you know, they don't, and in fact, they look disgusted when they see me. And so, you know, we kind of tend to leave. So this is the first behavioral symptom, utsaha mayi. Then the second is ganatarala, which means thick, thin. Which means basically sometimes we're very enthusiastic, but sometimes we're very lethargic. Sometimes we're very inspired, sometimes we're not. Our endeavors are very sporadic. You know, you make a vow, from today onwards, I'm going to chant 32 rounds, wake up at 2 a.m., and 3 days later, you wake up 9 o'clock and you chant 4 rounds a day. So if you're going through this, we can understand that this is a natural symptom of being in a stage of anartha-nivritti. The third behavioral symptom is vyoida vikalpa, which means that our determination is very flickering, or we're very, very indecisive. Right? We're not sure what we should do. You know, we're not sure what service we should do. We're not sure whether it's better if I, you know, work outside, have a family, and, you know, contribute to the Krishna conscious movement through that, or should I go and live in a cave in Vrindavan? You know, I'm just not sure. It's hard to make a decision. So this is vyoida vikalpa. The fourth is visayas sagara. Visayas sagara means we struggle with our previous habits. You know, we all have a past, and we all did, let's say, so many nice things. And these things sometimes tend to come back in our lives and haunt us. Right? We think, after a few years in Krishna consciousness, that's it. I've overcome the obstacle that I once had. but then we see how somehow or other it kind of seems to come back in our lives. Or we may go to Krishna and say, this is a habit that I've had for years, but from today onwards, I'm going to renounce it. I promise you, Krishna, I'm not going to indulge in this bad habit. But somehow or other it comes back in our lives. And this kind of internal tug of war goes on. So this is Visaya Sagara. The fifth is Niyamakshama. Niyamakshama means the inability to uphold vows. You know, we may make certain vows in Krishna consciousness. Like every Ekadashi, I've done this many times, every Ekadashi I say I'm going to chant X amount of rounds and I'm not going to eat. But what happens is, there's always some excuse that the mind creates. And you kind of, you don't follow the vow. So this is Niyamakshama. And the final thing is Taranga Rangini. And this is quite an interesting one. It means that we begin to enjoy the opulences of devotional service. So as we practice devotional service, certain benefits may come because of our service. Or just by associating with Krishna, the nature of a devotee is that he becomes very attractive. And because he becomes attractive, he may, or she may receive recognition, adoration, or may achieve a certain position, or may acquire a certain license with wealth, or may attract a certain type of following. If we begin to enjoy these things, then we've succumbed to this particular anatta. So these are the symptoms that Vishwanath Chakravarti gives to show how, or explain, or indicate how someone is going through anatta nivritti. I know many of those appear in my personal life. So natural next question is, how do we remove these? How do we remove these anattas in the quickest way possible? There's a famous verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I wanted to read some statements that Prabhupada makes in the purport to this verse. The verse is Shimvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtana Hridyantos Dohar Bhadrani Vidanotis Savitsatam. The translation is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart and a benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire from material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So this is, I'm sure, a famous verse that everyone's familiar with. That when one develops the urge to hear Krishna's messages, says, Krishna personally, he cleans the heart of all material enjoyment. It's interesting, the Sanskrit for Krishna in this verse is Surit. There's another verse in the Bhagavad Gita where the same word is used. Krishna says, Suridam Sarvabhutanam. Krishna says he is a well-wisher. Prabhupada's given one class and he was explaining that there are different words in Sanskrit for friend. There's bandhu, there's mitra. But Surit is the most intimate form, expression of friendship. You know, we have friends, acquaintances, but literally speaking, Krishna is our best friend. And because he's our best friend, he always wants what's good for us. And Prabhupada makes this point in the purport. He says that the Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. Now listen to this. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. And then Prabhupada says, most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps him in all respects. So I personally thought that this was very significant, because, sometimes we think that, where is Krishna in our lives? We're going through hardships, we're going through difficulties, we're going through challenges. But we should understand that the fault doesn't lie in Krishna, but the fault clearly lies in us. And it's a fact, as Prabhupada says, that most of us do not desire to go back to Godhead. This is our unfortunate situation. Most of us, when we first come to Krishna consciousness, we come because we're suffering in the material world. And we're looking to Krishna to relieve that distress. And once that distress is relieved, we kind of think that we want to do something else.